Aloha, I'm Bordessa from liveukulele.com, and today I want to share about playing by ear. Playing by ear is something that many people want to be able to do, but they're not sure how to go about doing it because it's a very different skill set from the traditional ukulele learning style, which is, you take your lessons and you read from the sheet and you follow along with the tab or whatever it may be that you're referencing in front of you. And in a way, this is kind of like playing with your eyes, which is fine. It works for a lot of people, and there's a lot of music that is learned this way. But from an intuitive standpoint, it doesn't give most players the freedom that they want when they're inside the music and just be able to react accordingly just from their ear and what they're hearing. So I'm going to try and give you some tips for jumping into this sort of side of music and hopefully help you on your way getting started. The first thing you might want to do when you're learning to play by ear is to practice some simple ear training drills. And there can be any number of these, but the one that comes to my mind that seems most straightforward is to listen to recordings and to single out the instrument tracks. For instance, if you're listening to a band recording, which is going to be pretty much any recording of some sort of popular music, say like the Beatles or the Rolling Stones or something, you're going to have drums, you're going to have guitar, bass, and usually vocals, and sometimes keyboards and other instruments. What you can do is hone in on listening to just one of these instruments. Usually we're used to kind of just appreciating the music as a whole, and that's really nice. It's good to be able to do that. But if you practice focusing in on one single instrument, you're going to learn how to kind of tune out the rest of what's happening and focus in on what you want to hear. And in the long run, that's really what you need to be able to do in order to play by ear. You can't listen to the whole song. You need to just listen to the part you're trying to learn. So what I recommend is listen to your favorite song, listen to your favorite album, and go through each track and listen for the parts. Listen to the guitar first and really just focus in on what the guitar player is playing. Even if you don't play that instrument that you're listening for and you don't understand the music that it's making, you can at least kind of pick up on the vibe of what they're portraying and the rhythmic space that they're filling with their part. So that's what I would recommend doing, is trying to just appreciate each instrument as its own singular function in the mix. Once you've had a chance to listen really closely to the guitar, move on maybe to the drums and listen to what the drummer is playing and how his rhythm works with the rest of the song. The goal when you're doing this is to make the rest of the instruments kind of fade out of your perception, and your ear will be left mostly listening to just that one instrument you're honing in on. Now this is going to take some practice. A lot of times there are many tracks that are more challenging to hear than others. For instance, the vocal track is usually super easy to hear. That's what most people are used to listening to specifically, because that's where the lyrical content is stored, and usually the vocal is mixed much louder than the other instruments, so that it's very obvious for people to listen to that track. But say for instance, if there's like just a background organ part that's playing along, that's going to be an even harder challenge because it might be downplayed in the mix. The fader, the volume of the track might not be as high as the rest of the instruments. So you're gonna have to work a little bit harder to hear those. But if you get to the point where you're used to hearing a single track, you can use that trick and sort of tune out the rest of the instruments and hear just the one you want to listen for and really identify what they're playing in their part. All right, moving on to putting some of these things onto the ukulele. We're going to focus on listening to melodies. I think it's too much to try and do a video on everything you need to know about playing by ear because there's just so much. So we're going to focus on melody. And the melody is the hook of the song. It's the one part that if somebody asked you, hum this song, the part that you would probably hum. It's usually the vocal line because that's the most memorable. It's just one note at a time. In some instances, in like an instrumental song, there will be the melody will be played by an instrument. But even so, it's still probably going to be a single note line, and it's going to be really obvious and very easy to remember as the hook of that song. It's the part you want to be able to sing. All right? So with a melody, we're only working with one note, which is good because as soon as we get to chords, you have multiple notes. Some are moving up, some are moving down. There's just more to listen for. And if you're new to ear training or playing by ear, then chords are a bit more of a challenge. So when you're first examining a melody, what you need to know in order to put it onto your instrument are two things. What note you start on and where it goes to. And if you can answer those two things, you can get a really easy start playing any melody. And once you have your first note down, every note after that you figure out, you only need to answer one thing. Where does the note go? And where a note goes can be one of three things. The note can go up, the note can go down, or the note can stay the same. That's really all you get. There's not anything else that's going to happen with a melody. Okay? Let's take a look at some of those different sounds. As you're learning to play by ear, these sounds are going to become more and more familiar, and you'll be able to identify them easier. Usually, the further a note moves, the easier it is to hear whether it's going up or down. So if you're just starting out, maybe a half step next note move might not be super obvious. You might think, oh, maybe it's going down or maybe it's staying the same when it's really going up. But if you're going a large distance, a lot of times it's easier. For instance, if I play A and I go all the way up an octave, it's very obviously higher. The next note I'm playing is higher. But if I'm playing just A to B, which is a whole step up, it's a lot less obvious where the note is going. But as you do this more and more, it will become easier to identify that the note is going actually up instead of going down or staying the same. But just for instance, I'm going to show you these three different options. First of all, if the note stays the same, we're going to just be playing. If you think of the trajectory of the melody as a line, when you stay on the same note, the line stays the same. There's no shift, there's no internal feeling of movement when you play the same melody note twice, right? If we move upwards, you kind of feel a lift. And a lot of times we try and overthink things and over-listen to when we're beginning to learn by ear, and you try and force something to happen and force an analysis to take place. But really, your body and your kind of intuition is going to tell you where the curve goes. So if you imagine the curve, it's going up for that next note. Or here's a different one. There's that lift. And then the last option is moving downwards, right? The line drops. And really, when you're playing by ear, it's useful to just pick random notes and hear how they relate to each other. If you pick and then play a note that's lower, think to yourself, this note goes down. How far down does it go? And if you can sing it, that's even better. Dun, dun. That way you're feeling the vibrations in your head because of your voice, and when you relate that in your mind to lower, then when that dun, 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 when you hear that in your mind, then it's just more obvious that the pitch of the note is dropping in that case. So what I'd like to do now is walk with you through a super simple song that most people know, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. And no, it's not the most exciting song in the world, but when it comes to ear training, you really want to pick something that is super simple and that you're familiar with. Because if you're not used to the song and you can't sing the song in your mind or imagine how it's supposed to go, you're going to have to reference some sort of recording. And what that does is it kind of slows you down because you're having to go back to the beginning of the recording Or the recording might not be in a key that is super conducive to learning to play by ear. And when you're learning to play by ear, if you play in an easy key, a lot of times it's more familiar because you might already know where some of the notes are on the instrument and you won't be completely on new territory. All right? So in this case, let's play in the key of C, and it's fortunate that Twinkle Twinkle Little Star starts on a C note. But remember, a melody does not have to start on the note that the key is named after. So in this case, we start on a C, we're in the key of C. But there are lots of melodies that start on a G note in the key of C, or a E note, right? A melody can start anywhere in the key, and knowing that, and knowing which note the melody starts from is very important. But in this case, I'm going to give you the answer. We're starting on a C note. Okay? So, twinkle, twinkle, little star, right? That's what we're going for. The first two notes of the melody are twinkle. You need to assess. Is that staying the same? Is it moving up? Is it moving down? Twinkle. In this case, it's staying the same. So we know that we started on a C note. We're going to play a C note again. That's our melody. And then after that, twinkle, twinkle. We're moving up. So we can search upwards of the C note where we were at for the next note. And what I'm going to do here, instead of searching for every note in the chromatic scale, which is every note on a string, if we were to play every fret all the way up, that is a chromatic scale. But in this case, when I'm looking for this next note to illustrate it, I'm going to only search inside the C scale. So, twinkle, twinkle, that's the next note we want. Dun, dun, and it helps if you sing the note that you need while you're looking for it. Dun. That's the one I want. It's a G note, right? Dun, 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 dun. If we play it together, it's going to be C, C, G, G, and that G is on the 3rd fret of the E string. After that, what happens? Well, in this case, we play twinkle, twinkle. There's another G because that note stays the same on the 2nd twinkle. And then after that, little, we have another double, and it moves upwards. So after the G, we know we're going higher than the G, so we can look accordingly. And again, I'm going to stay in the scale. But this time, I'm going to skip up higher than I think the note needs to be, and I'm going to come down to it and see if I can find it. So for instance, that was our last note. I'm going to skip up to an E note on the 7th fret of the bottom string. This is obviously too higher than we need to go. Let's start from the beginning. No. Bum, 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 bum. That's what we want. We want the A string. But what I want to illustrate to you is the fact that when you're searching for the note, it's not always a pretty process at all. You might just really have to work your way through the mud and try different things and try searching. And you might play all the wrong notes before you find the right note. You might play the right note and think it sounds wrong and just go right past it. And that's, part of the learning process is you'll try all the rest of the notes and none of them will work and you'll have to do it again. And like, okay, where do I really need to be? Make sure you're singing the right note. Make sure the melody notes that you've worked through already are correct. Because if you get a melody note wrong somewhere earlier on in the melody, it's going to shift everything into a weird place that your ear isn't used to. So then everything might be off by a note. That's very common too. And it's all part of the process. You can't beat yourself up about it as you work through this because it does take time and it does take practice. Okay, so we'll continue on here and then I'm going to send you away with homework to figure out the kind of the second phrase of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. And again, little is the same. Twinkle, twinkle, little. The pitch stays the same, right? We're just going straight on the line. Star. And then from that one, twinkle, twinkle, little star, we're moving back down. And if your ear's really good, you might recognize that as the note before we went up to the A, which is a G. So all we're gonna do is go from A, little star, and we go down to the G. Okay? After that, we're gonna do the How I Wonder part, right? And just to give you a hint and to get you started, this is the bit that I want you to try and figure out on your own. The next note is gonna be an F for how. How. And then I'm gonna leave it up to you to try and figure out the rest. Just work your way through that. Don't beat yourself up about that. I can't say that enough. It's just be patient in the process. It's going to take time. You're not gonna get it right off the bat. And you certainly shouldn't start with any kind of song that's, difficult. I see lots of people who jump right in and they're wanting to learn a song that's very difficult. They heard Jake Shimabukuro play it and they want to figure it out, but they can't find tabs. So they're either asking for tabs or trying to figure it out themselves. And it's just the difficulty level is through the roof and they don't have any foundation to start with. So it's really important that you just give yourself the space to suck, right? Dare to suck. That's what James Hill always says. And I love that saying. Just dare to suck. Choose something simple to start with and go from there. If you do 5 simple songs and learn to play them perfectly by ear and just get the melody really dialed in, it's going to be a lot more useful and productive than trying to figure out one hard song, doing a lot of it wrong, and not having any kind of success. So simple songs, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, Happy Birthday, Row 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 Your Boat, maybe like Amazing Grace is another good one. Those kind of really traditional simple songs are pure gold when you're practicing learning by ear. So with that said, I'll leave you there, figure out the rest of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. If you need to find a recording for it, look that up, sing it out loud, sing it with your kids, try and just get the melody in your mind and hunt for the melody, and I think you'll surprise yourself in what you can find. I'll be back with another video on adding chords and figuring chords out by ear. That's a little bit more complicated a subject. So we'll do that at a later date when I have in my head what I need to explain and teach to you folks to get that all dialed in. Because learning by ear, it's kind of an abstract thing. It's not necessarily the easiest thing to sit down and play. It's really easy to sit down and here's how you play the song. But teaching you the skills to figure out how to play the song, that is a little bit of a challenge. And I look forward to the challenge as a teacher trying to identify the best way to share that with you folks. So thanks for watching. If you like what you see, please subscribe. Check out the website, liveukulele.com. I've got my books, Ukulele Chord Shapes, Right Hand Technique for Ukulele, Left Hand Technique for Ukulele, all just really books about fundamental concepts. That's what I'm all about, is fundamentals. So whether you're a beginner, advanced player, hopefully you can find something in there, and certainly you can find something on the website for free. So take care of each other, take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video. Aloha.